What I later learned were agents, federal agents, on my porch. We have guns pointed at our children and my wife, and I don't even know why they're there.
I said, do you have a warrant? And they said, we're taking him with or without a warrant.
And they said, well, you know why we're here. I thought about it. I said, oh, you're here because I rescue babies.
Thank you, Mark and Ryan Marie, for coming out. And Imelda, our special guest. It's great to have you guys out here.
It's great to be with you. Thanks for having us.
You've been really busy lately.
It's been busy 2 weeks, for sure.
Yeah. And
busier than most.
And before that, a busy few months, I'm going to guess. Yeah.
It's been a busy 4 months.
So a lot of people have been watching your story, and I want to hear not just recently the dramatic events that so many people have been outraged over, but also deeply moved by your witness during, but also the backstory. You know, how did it come to the place where you're doing beautiful work on the sidewalk and your family's supporting us, your son's out there with you to protect lives, you know, outside an abortion clinic, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're facing the full crackdown of the U.S. federal government and what led to that. So for starters, though, born and raised in Philly, how did you both meet? And how long have you been married, and how did you both meet? And I want to hear maybe your story and your whatever version, whoever wants to go first.
We met at a pro-life prayer vigil on January 27th, 2007. Within a month, I had a ring, and
Wow,
2 months later,
quickly.
proposed, and that was April 13th. It was tax day. I proposed.
Romantic.
April 15th.
I proposed on
Great
the
day.
Catholic radio. I proposed on Catholic radio, and I had a radio program that I was doing, and so I was.
Were you listening? I hope.
He
No,
actually
it wasn't like that.
He actually did a whole program preparing
Courtship
on courtship
and
and
marriage.
Okay.
marriage. So he had a woman, a single woman on, and a single man on to talk about like courtship and dating and things like that. And then so the marriage part was going to be
It was the second show.
him
So
proposing.
I said, you got to come into the studio for this. Now she doesn't know it's happening. It's tax day, so she's like, oh, okay, you know.
taxes.
And she said, I don't think I'm going to go. I said, oh, it's fine. Meanwhile, I'm texting her sisters. I'm like, you got to get her there. I got this all set up. I got dinner reservations. You got to get her there. So she comes. I couldn't even pronounce my name at the beginning of the show. I was so nervous. I had a suit on. She shows up. She sees me with the suit on. I'm doing the radio, and we come to the end, about 10 minutes left, and I pop the question on the air. Well, she doesn't say anything.
I'm an introvert.
Did you were like, is this happening or?
Dead air is not good for live radio. So I had to repeat the
Especially
question.
with the most important question
Yeah.
in your life, right?
So I had to repeat the question. I was on one knee and talking to the
Oh, you're
microphone.
on one knee in the radio.
That's right.
And I'm just like,
Projecting.
This is an extrovert's proposal. That's what that sounds like.
Truly.
yeah, my brother wasn't able to be there, so he wanted to make sure that my brother could hear it and things like that. So,
Right. So
yeah.
she said, what'd you say?
I said, absolutely.
That was great.
So you get married, you have a ton of kids, and you're doing ministry the whole time. And you know that leads to the events of this last fall because they affected you equally when they started, and you were both there. And then obviously you experienced something that I think nobody should have experienced. So I want to talk about that. Talk to me about that morning. The time leading up to the moment you heard that loud knock on the door, banging on the door.
Sure. So it all transpired a year prior, which was October 13th, 2021, where my son and I were going into the city. It's a great day for Mark Jr. and I. 2 hours down, 2 hours back. Great father-son time. He's got the boys' choir in Philadelphia later that afternoon. And then Mark, we're going to go down and pray. And he loves it. He loves doing it. He's gone to like 40 or 50 prayer vigils with me. And we would go down to the city, and it's a great day for us, as I said. And he helps me do sidewalk counseling, mostly prayer support.
And for those listening, a lot of folks will know, but explain what a sidewalk counselor is.
Sure. Sidewalk counselors are nothing more than people who have a kind heart, a compassionate heart, who want to just be there at the 11th hour when women and men are in a difficult situation. They think they might want to get an abortion, or they're going to utilize some sort of service at Planned Parenthood that could end up in an abortion. And so we were there to offer them alternatives. And so sidewalk counselors present that invitation, and it's done compassionately, lovingly, respectfully. And the First Amendment allows us to do it. And it's a something that I've been doing for years that I think I'm good at because I'm good on my feet. I'm good at standing in the gap and just being that person who might be able to just say something that would trigger a pause. Stay pregnant for one more day. You're already a mother to your child. You're already a father to your child. When the men are there, I can talk to the men really well because I'm a man. And then, of course, I can show them life. When my son's there, and I can bring my 7 children, which I've done, that's even better because they can see the beauty of life.
So you did some of that too on the sidewalk with Mark.
Yeah, we don't go down as
It's hard with
often.
7.
It's emotionally a difficult time too. So you have to be really, careful about how much you're exposing them to. But it's also important for them to see.
And for people listening, so you're describing that before you heard the banging on the door, which we're going to get to. This is not something that you just showed up on the sidewalk, a year before the FBI came. It was actually you had spent years doing this, and sometimes with your whole family.
That's right.
What's the motivation? What has been in you that even starting the King's Men and going to the sidewalks, what has been that core motivator for you?
Sure. The core motivator for me, going down to the clinics and allowing my children to be exposed to it, is because the fundamental issue in the culture today is the life issue. And for me, it begins and ends there. God created these souls. I'm a soul. And I see souls in jeopardy. I see women and men afraid to embrace life and the gift of life. And I know the great gift of that. And I know that it's important to be there, to be that witness, to pray in the midst of that darkness at times, because it is a great sadness and dark place to be. So I go because I'm able to influence and use my gifting as a man to strengthen women who don't feel like they have a man who can strengthen them. So I go there because I've been a part of the saving of lives, because we can affect change, and because people do listen. And I think deep down in their hearts, they want someone to rescue them from that experience. So we have to go, because if we don't go, then everything else will change, right, in the culture. If we can't save the most innocent, if we can't speak for the most innocent, then what rights do the rest of us have? What if we don't protect those rights? We have to go down there and demonstrate the importance of the dignity of the human person. And so that's why I go.
And what kind of fruits have you seen from being on the sidewalk?
I mean, we've saved. I mean, I would guess it's hard to know because indirect and direct results, but I could probably count over the last 20 years about 100 babies that have been born as a result of our yes, saying yes to life and praying with others.
So 100 babies
at least
that would have been aborted, and their mothers experienced the devastation of that abortion, and their family and the father, but they weren't. They're living. And did you follow up with some of them afterwards? Would you ever hear, get to hold a baby that...
Oh, sure. Yeah, we had a little Nevaeh, which is heaven spelled backwards, last March with us in our home, holding the baby. She was premature. She had tubes. She had an IV, but we held her. We had dinner with Jada and Markeem, who are on video. The video is out there. It's viral.
And you met them outside the clinic.
I did. And in fact...
The day that Nevaeh would have been aborted.
Dad said, Lord, give us a sign. It's amazing they'll say that stuff. Give us a sign. Why was the sign? His hand was on the door at Planned Parenthood, and I said, you don't have to go in there today. And that was his sign. And he turned back. We went and got a chocolate croissant, gave him coffee, and we talked. And I said, you can do this. Check out these babies. You can do this. I know you can do this. I strengthened him. I encouraged her. And I just used my gifting to say, guys, we'll walk with you. The pro-life movement is there before, during, and after. And so we're there after. Now we gave them a mattress.
Oh,
right,
what do you need? We got everything.
I got 7 kids. I got plenty of baby stuff.
They're like, we need a mattress. I'm like, oh, we have one. We have an extra one,
But we've held these babies, little baby Sienna. We'll hold her soon. So it's hard to know, but you save a soul. It's
one life. I mean, one life's worth it.
That's
all
it.
of it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
There's also, plenty of women that have come out and fallen into his arms who have had an abortion, but he's there for them too, and I think that's, so important. that they immediately regret what they've done too. And not all of them, obviously. Some are very hurt and say really terrible things to him and my son. But there are plenty of women who come out and they immediately are regretting what they've done, and they ask us to pray for them. And he's helped them name their children right there in the moment, and all of our children pray for them and ask their children to intercede for them. So it's, a circle of love.
Well, you see the whole missionary family
Yeah.
involved, and the kids really think that their prayers make a difference. And we know they do, but they believe it. They truly believe it's a pure prayer. So if I get my kids pray for this mom, she's contemplating abortion, I know that that's a pure prayer, and their soul and their hearts are pure. So God hears those. The prayers of a righteous man availeth much. So we know that. Get the kids praying, So
Beautiful.
they've been a part of the
And teaching
saving.
them to pray for others who
Sure.
need it most is
Yeah.
such a gift to your kids to model that and to encourage that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're so diligent about it. It's a constant.
They don't forget.
Like months and months and months, they will say each and every person.
They're not as distracted as we are.
Yeah.
Or selfish. I mean, the purity there is bigger for a kid. I mean, there's just a natural purity.
Yeah. Sometimes the prayers just go on and on and on. And we're like,
You're like, it's time for bed.
Yeah, okay.
Can you give me a glass of milk?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Let's pray for it. So-
Yeah.
so-
It's the litany.
It's the litany. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So that year prior, tell me about the events of that day.
Right. So Mark and I
Year
are
prior to the bang on the
right.
drum, yeah.
October 13th. Mark and I are praying. We're praying our rosary, and we see women come out of the building. We were there for about 45 minutes. It was about 12:45 in the afternoon. And as I normally do, I greet the women and I try to offer them information. Now, thankfully, 50 feet away from the sidewalk is a pregnancy resource center.
Amazing.
So we're able to take them there and escort them there, right, if they would like that, and ring the doorbell and get them an appointment. And so I was in the process of walking across the street with these two women, engaging them, and they were listening, politely listening, and we approached the next block. Well, an escort from Planned Parenthood runs over and puts himself between me and the women, which of course is a violation of my rights, right? Because I'm escorting these women, and now he's interrupted and frustrated that whole experience. And there's a bit of a bump, if you will, an altercation where I disengage with the women, and now he's done what he wanted to do, which was to prevent me from talking to them. So that was the first incident, and nothing really came of it. We walked back. I went back to pray with my son, and he went into the building. About 20 minutes later, he emerges. He comes back out. Now, I've known this man for 20 years. He's engaged me many times. He's engaged my son many times. He's very vulgar. He says things he shouldn't say. I think he taught my son the F word. We're homeschooled, so he didn't hear it before he was down there. So he may have heard it, but he didn't really know what it meant. But in the context of how he heard it, he learned it. And so down in that part of the city, it's tough. But I can interpret all the lessons for him, and I can explain things. Well, he comes back out, and on this day, he usually stands at the gate, which is where they all stand, the entrance. Well, we're at the corner, 50
And these
feet
are
away.
Planned Parenthood volunteers or staffers
That's right.
who are there to basically break contact, any kind of verbal contact or even emotional connection that you have with people going in. And you're there offering alternatives.
That's
They're
right.
making money off of these abortions.
Sure.
You're offering alternatives. We would lose money, at the pregnancy
Right.
center to serve these families. And just for context to people listening, if people listening have been on the sidewalks before, they've probably seen some of this
Sure.
themselves, or they've done a 40 Days for Life vigil, which we highly recommend. Getting involved. Even myself being on the sidewalk, screaming, vulgarity, aggressive actions coming from Planned Parenthood staff. I mean, or escorts. This is a kind of typical thing, honestly, that you were dealing with and you've been dealing with for 20 years. The addition here, though, is you're there with your young minor
12-year-old son.
12-year-old
Right.
son.
Yeah. So again, the escort comes out, and they have a strict policy, which we learned in the trial, not to engage pro-lifers, activists, people doing outreach. But nonetheless, he disengaged from that policy, and he came right up to my son, literally placed himself right next to him, violated his personal space, which he never does. He's never done that. And I said, "Hey man, you gotta leave us alone." And he was talking to me, and I said, "Fine, but I was ignoring him mostly." But then he starts talking to my son. Now he's talked to my son before, but this time he's ignoring me and he's talking to my son about me. And he's trying to get in his mind. He's trying to get in, your dad hates women. Your dad's hurting women. See what your dad's doing. Now, look, you're a father and you're watching this all happen. And my son shuffles away from him like, this is uncomfortable, I'm scared, what's happening here? He's never done this before. I said, look, you need to leave. You need to go back and I walk him back to where he normally stands. And I think he's going to be compliant with that. I turn back to go back and be with my son. Next thing I know, he must have turned around and he starts talking to my son. I can hear him out of my ear. So I turn around and I push him, and it became a
Push him out of
father's
the
rights.
way of your
Yeah,
son.
push him away from my son. It became a father's rights. It wasn't First Amendment rights. It was dad's rights. You know, like, I'm a dad. I have a 12-year-old son. Stop badgering him. Well, he falls down. The man falls down, and he goes inside. At this point, Mark and I, we go and we went and we prayed. We did a holy hour, and then we came back and just kind of cool things down. Came back, gave a statement to the civil affairs that were there, police department, and said, here's my information. This is what happened. Here's my statement. He said, sir, I don't think there's really anything here, but he may personally come after you and press charges. I said, that's fine. So he did.
What did the man say, by the way, after you pushed him out of the way like that? Did he say anything?
Actually, he didn't say anything. He got up and went right inside.
Like, okay, I'm gonna peace out now.
Yeah, I think he got what he wanted because it was caught on camera. He got what he wanted, and
Oh, you mean you think he did this on purpose because he wanted to invite some sort of altercation?
right. So remember that we had that first incident across the street. He goes inside a Planned Parenthood and he comes back out again, and he comes directly beeline to my son and puts himself about a foot or two away from my son. So baiting me, provoking me, and wanting some sort of incident to occur. So this is what all played out in the trial. But
just for clarification too, some people, why don't you guys just take off and just leave entirely? Just bug off, get out of there.
Sure.
You were at your post.
Right.
I mean, the whole purpose of this is to be peacefully, prayerfully on the sidewalk,
Sure.
to offer resources, and he's literally coming up to you, trying to get you to basically leave. Right? I mean, that was ultimately what his goal is.
There was no women near us. There was no abortion-minded women coming or going. It was just him antagonizing, provoking, and trying to get us to leave, maybe, or just, again, provoke us towards an incident. Because, again, I've known him for 20 plus years. I've been there. They know me. Planned Parenthood knows me. And they know that I'm effective at what I do. So I don't know what his goals were that day, but I know he went back inside right after that happened. Didn't say anything. We came back, as I said, we gave a statement. Yeah. And then he files a private criminal complaint about a month later. Puts me in the municipal court system, PA State Court, Philadelphia. The DA didn't want to prosecute. The Philadelphia PD didn't want to prosecute. There was no case there. They got bigger fish to fry. It's a shoving incident on the sidewalk. Happens at the Eagles game every weekend, right? You're not going to have an issue there. It was dismissed. He didn't even bother to show up for court dates. It was dismissed, and it was finished by April of 2022. Now, 5 days later, I'm served on the sidewalk where I'm normally standing in front of Planned Parenthood by the Department of Justice a target letter on April 27th saying you're a target of a federal grand jury investigation. Have your attorney contact this office right away. So we had Matt Britton from 40 Days for Life engaged in our legal defense with the prior case. He says you need to talk to Matt Heffron at Thomas More Society. Matt Heffron gets involved. He's a former federal prosecutor, calls the AUSA, Assistant U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District, FBI in Philadelphia, says you have no case. My client's innocent. There's case law in this district against you indicting him. However, should you want to indict him, he's a peaceful man. No need to bring an agent out to his house. We'll bring him in. Okay,
so just to clarify, you heard word that the FBI was investigating, the DOJ was investigating, and that you might get indicted, charged with a crime. And you had your attorney reach out to be like, listen, we don't think, they think this whole thing is wrong, but if you want to pursue charges, I will turn myself in.
That's what my attorney said. Yeah, like peaceful guy. Yeah. Just call him up. We'll come down. No problem. But you have no case. But should you want to indict him, here you go. We'll bring him to you. And was that a matter of foresight? Like, we don't want to deal with some crazy arrest situation. I mean, were you actually thinking through, like, hey, the government is one of the most pro-abortion governments, and arguably the most pro-abortion federal government we've ever had.
President Biden is extraordinarily pro-abortion. The DOJ is very pro-abortion right now. So they want to make examples of pro-lifers. They've already been coming after them. So I want to just avoid some crazy arrest situation. Was that kind of something that you guys had
No, because this is
contemplated?
April.
Okay.
This is April. Dobbs hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
This is April 27th, 2022, pre-Dobbs. Now, we know that it hasn't even leaked yet what Sam Alito's arguments were. So that hasn't even leaked yet. We know we're closer because we have the votes on the bench, but we're not there yet. So I'm not even thinking
Of anything.
FBI raid on my home. There's no Joan Andrews Bell. There's no Mar-a-Lago. There's nothing like that we've witnessed. So we're just thinking, okay, this is just a done deal. We're done.
And Ryan, Marie, did you ever, as Mark's doing all this, and even when you heard about this letter that you get, it wasn't a summons. What did they call it?
It's a target letter.
It's a target letter that you received. How did you feel about that?
Well, I remember that at first we weren't even sure exactly what it was pertaining to. So we weren't sure were other pro-lifers getting this target letter. It took us a little bit to even make the connection that it was from that last October incident. I don't know if that was from Matt Heffron's information that he obtained, but when we first received it, we weren't sure exactly why we were getting it.
Yeah, they put on there that the FACE Act, that there are violations of the FACE Act. Well, that's freedom of access to clinic entrances. Well, we didn't block the clinic entrances. We didn't do what the statute says. So we're trying to
So we
put
thought
it all
maybe
together.
it was like across the board. So were there other pro-lifers in our area that
Yeah.
had gotten target
Is this from
letters?
years ago, whatever,
Yeah.
who knows?
Right.
But Matt's in communication with the DOJ, and we didn't think anything's going to come up. We think they're going to. Now, Dobbs happens, okay, see that. Then we start to see these series of arrests, which is Joan Andrews Bell and all these other folks, Donald Trump, and then we're the next person. Now, in August, my attorney contacts me of 2022 and says, have you heard from the assistant U.S. attorney?
And what you're watching, and other folks listening may have remembered this, but the Biden DOJ seemed to get particularly weaponized against political opponents, right?
Right.
So the Mar-a-Lago thing is, they're showing up with,
Sure.
to do a raid there for these documents. I mean, there's kind of these expressions of, you could say, police power coming from the state over matters that were very questionable, right? And I think that's where pro-lifers are like, okay, they're very hostile to the pro-life community. They're very pro-abortion. Are they going to use unjustly the power of the state to kind of sort of quash pro-life sentiment post-Dobbs, post the overturning of Roe v. Wade?
Right, and that's the situation and the climate at the time. But we weren't thinking that we were going to be raided because we're innocent, and there's nothing relatable to.
Nothing to raid.
There's nothing to raid here. Like, okay, so it was already
Except for a bunch of
dismissed in court.
babies in diapers.
Well, that's the thing is, I think somebody said all that they're going to find there is like a bunch of cereal and like milk.
Cheerios for 7
Yeah.
children. That was Bishop Joe Strickland. But anyhow, so August, I get a call from Matt Heffron. He says, have you heard from the assistant U.S. attorney? And I said, well, no. Why would I have heard from him? He said, well, she won't return my phone calls. Now, he's my attorney. So, okay, so well, maybe let's just let sleeping dogs lie. Maybe they're just like, there's no case here. Well, the next thing we know, to your question, is September 23rd, Friday morning at 6:45 in the morning. I got a quiche in the oven because it's co-op day, and I eat quiche. I'm not afraid to admit that.
So wait, you wake up in the morning and you're baking in the kitchen.
I'm baking.
All right. Anybody who thinks there's stereotypical male-female roles
That's
here,
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
you are up before the family baking.
Everybody.
He
up
makes
before
breakfast.
Proudly.
He makes breakfast every morning.
As
when
he
he's
should.
home.
Excellent. Okay.
So it's dark in the fall in rural Pennsylvania at 6:45 in the morning. I woke her. She's stirring, but the children are all asleep. I'm downstairs, got the oven on, got the quiche in there. I hear
Is it apron on? All right. Sorry,
Shorts,
this is a serious
t-shirt,
story. We're gonna keep
shorts,
it serious.
t-shirt, and flip-flops. That's important data
Flip-flops
point. I'll
in
tell you why.
Philadelphia in the winter.
That's right.
Well,
yeah.
he had just gotten out of bed, so he just like threw on, whatever.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
his
I don't know why
t-shirt.
the flops were on, but they were on.
Okay.
Oh,
For
you
some reason.
probably like.
Probably had to go outside and grab something.
Yeah.
But I hadn't done it
And
yet.
it's dark outside.
It's dark
Yeah,
It's
outside.
early morning, winter.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm in the kitchen and the doorbell rings repeatedly at 6:44. Like, over and over again. And I said, oh my gosh, like it's alarming the whole house.
What did you think it was?
Almost like someone get hit by a car, someone scared outside. Then there's banging, really heavy banging.
What did you think it was?
And then I heard open up. Now, this is apparently the FBI, but at the time I didn't know that. All they do is ring the doorbell, bang, and yell open up. Now, in Pennsylvania, it's an open carry state. Second Amendment rights are fully on display, and we have a lot of hunters in the area where I live. A lot of people would have gone to the door with a gun in their hand because it was that type of an alarming thing. There was no sirens outside. I could not see anything. So I go to the door and I say, well, who is it? And then there's banging again, the doorbell again, open up, it's the FBI. I'm like, okay, well, at least now we've declared who it is.
And you believed him?
Well, I saw...
Because that's the other thing. It's like, is this
right, who is
someone
this
trying to
crazy person?
Rob my family right now? You know, who knows, right?
I see the siren lights,
Okay.
but there's no noise. I see the siren lights. I can't really see. I just can see a little bit out of a pixelated window. So I said, okay, stay calm, I say to them. I have 7 babies in here. Please stay calm. I don't know what I'm going to see, but I know it doesn't look good. And I don't even know why they're there. So I open the door and I show them my hands, because I knew that would be important. And I see what looked like a circus. 15 marked and unmarked units, lights all going, not only on my property is 100 yards to the road. Cars lined up all the way to the road. There's a cul-de-sac in front of my house, and they're in that, and they're surrounding my house on my grass. So they basically enveloping my house with their vehicles. What I later learned were agents, federal agents, with about 5 of them on my porch with M16s pointed at me. I see heavily armored vests, ballistic helmets, ballistic shields, a battering ram, and I see PA state troopers all behind their doors, guns pointed at me in the grass. My daughter takes note later of someone at the back of the door. I didn't see that person.
At the back of the house.
Back of the door, the back house,
A sniper.
Like surrounding, like a hostage crisis.
She said there was men dressed in black with guns at our back doors, which are glass.
It's truly a nightmare for, like, you know, if you're a kid, it's like that idea of your house under siege and people attacking your family. I mean, that's kind of what it can trigger.
Yeah.
Sure. So I'd say the only thing that I know what to say is, what are you doing here? I came out of my door. No one said anything after I opened the door. I'm surprised I wasn't shot. I'm surprised I wasn't taken to the ground. They just kind of looked at me and I said, what are you doing here?
They looked at the flip-flops and they were like, they smelled the quiche and they were like, wrong house.
Right. She said, what if I go to the door with a knife in my hand or something? You know, because I'm getting ready to cut the quiche. I didn't, thanks be to God. But I come out and I said, what are you doing here? And they said, well, you know why we're here. And I said, I thought about it. I said, oh, you're here because I rescue babies. I started to put it together. Okay, okay. Then they didn't say anything to that. They didn't say anything till my wife comes down at this point. She comes down with her robe on, and she says...
I said, do you have a warrant?
Smart woman.
And they said, we're taking him with or without a warrant. And I said, no.
Not legal.
Yeah, I said, no, that's kidnapping at gunpoint. You can't take somebody. I want to see the warrant. Who are you here for? We're here for him. Who? He has a name. Tell me who you're here for. Mark Houck. Okay, I want to see the warrant. Like, you can't just come and arrest somebody and not even say their name and not produce a warrant from a judge saying that you have permission to do this. Like, so, and then they eventually gave me the warrant, but they took him first.
Prior to getting that.
Prior to getting the warrant.
So at this point, guns are on Ryan Marie, and now guns are in the threshold of our door, and it opens up. We have 2 double doors, and there's steps, and the children are now all lined on the steps. And they have a beeline right down, and the guns are they're downrange, essentially. And so we have guns pointed at our children and my wife.
So all the kids are awake at this point.
Everybody's
They're all awake. And,
screaming.
And they're obviously very upset. So I recognize that this isn't going to go well.
And what did they, and we're going to get to talk to Mark Jr. about your oldest son, about his experience here. But, afterwards, what was their experience of that? Waking up, almost dark outside, mom and dad's at the door. There's all of these men in black, with all of these, gear on, pointing these huge guns at them, and we have no clue why this is happening.
I mean, it was horrific for them. Like, for me, I was trying to listen to the police officers, and, Mark was asking them if he could get clothing, and they kept saying no. So I just was trying to gather information, but all of the children were screaming. My son was saying, "You can't take him. He's my best friend." And my daughter, Therese, was really a mess after she saw the people in the back of the house. And everybody it was 7 kids running around, screaming and crying and grabbing onto my legs. And it was...
Think of how reckless that is. Let's say one of my little ones grabbed one of the airsoft guns that we have and thought this would be an interesting thing to, let me show you my gun. Someone could have shot one of my children.
Or maybe they thought, these people are trying to hurt my family, I'm going to fight back.
Yeah.
As a little child.
Right.
As a little child. So it was extremely reckless, an act of terror designed to humiliate, intimidate, and instill fear in us, and they have effectively done that with our children to this day, but instill fear in pro-life America, right? Because this is now becoming an overreach of government. The full power of the government is now coming after this family, this sidewalk counselor, this ministry guy. And I say, can I get some clothes on? Can I put some socks on? No. Can I put a shirt on? No. Can I put pants on? No. They wouldn't see. When an agent comes to your house, it's like usually one or two. It's a drug dealer or someone, a violent offender. Finish your coffee, sir. Pack a bag. We're going downtown. That's how it's done. Not today. They let me take my rosary. I was in the car before she could even get the arrest warrant. I was in the car, and they were taking me away in the black Suburban.
And how were you? So Ryan Marie, you came down. You were asking very, prudently. You had the awareness in that moment to say, "Hey, give me the warrant." Like, try to ask those questions. How are you feeling?
Well, so when I first woke up, I saw the sirens on the wall, and I immediately ran to the window. I thought maybe somebody had an accident or something. And I saw our entire property covered with vehicles, and them getting out of their car. They were setting up behind their doors and stuff. And my mind was going crazy. I was thinking, like, are they here to take my children away? Because I homeschool, and like you hear all of these crazy things. And I'm like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'm starting to think maybe there's something to it. I just was very scared. I started running downstairs, and I just was like, Mark, and he already, was speaking to them through the door, and then he opens the door when I'm coming down the stairs. I'm halfway down, and then a gun is then pointed at me, and
even that, like, just the pointing of the gun at you, it's like pure reckless intimidation.
You're clearly unarmed. I have a
You're
leopard robe on. Yeah. I'm like,
zero violent criminal history for either of you, by the way.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
You mentioned, like, picking up a drug lord or like a drug dealer. It's like, if there's violent criminal history, you can say, okay, maybe there's a reason to use some show of force, but you are, none of that.
Right.
Right.
So they were going to take me downtown with or without a warrant, as they said, and they did. We were out of there in 15 minutes. I couldn't even say goodbye to my children. I couldn't even hug them. I couldn't hug her. I was cuffed in front of my kids and put in the back of the black Suburban.
Tell me about that. So they cuffed you in front of your kids.
Well, they brought me out, and of course the kids are watching it all. And I'm cuffed by the vehicle.
I wasn't downstairs at that point, so one of the officers told me, "Why don't you go upstairs and get him a sweatshirt? It's cold out." And I listened because he had asked for that, and they said no at first, but now that I look back on it, I think it was because I was not going to let them take him, without providing me with the warrant. And so I think they wanted to get rid of me. So I went upstairs to get him his sweatshirt, and when I came down, he was gone. I had no idea what vehicle he was in. So
they literally tricked you. It was like,
they
didn't care about the sweatshirt. They wanted you out of the scene.
Right.
And where were your kids while you were getting the sweatshirt?
They were downstairs and upstairs, like on the staircase. Yeah. And I just kept telling them, like, please calm down, like, to the children, because I was trying to focus and I was trying to stay calm. When I first came down the stairs and I wasn't really sure what was going on, I just wanted to make sure that they didn't come into our home. I didn't know why they were there. So I just wanted to make sure, like, they had no right to enter our home. And then, of course, all of this transpired and he was having these conversations with them. And so, yeah, I go upstairs, I get the sweatshirt, I come down, he's gone. And at that point, when I came back downstairs, vehicles had already started leaving the property because he was detained. And but I had no idea if he had left or if he was still on the property.
And there's no like phone. Obviously, they're letting you take to call home about where you're even going.
So I had said to the one agent that that my husband, was the best man that they would have ever met, and that this is what my tax dollars are going to.
I
was just like, and I said, well, you guys should all feel lucky to touch him because he's a living saint. I don't know why it just came out. But then the one agent said to him, your wife says that you're a good man.
So I get in the car, and again, I can't say goodbye, and I'm giving them directions because they don't even know where they're going. They don't even know where they are. They're in rural PA. One guy's from Delaware.
You're giving them directions to the police station?
To get out of the community because they don't even know where they are. And I'm like, don't go that way, go this way. But when I got in the car, I said, why did you need 30 people at my house? They said, well, sir, the driver said, we don't know anything about you. We just get the bench warrant.
Oh, it's not hard to find out. You literally have a website and pictures of your family. It's like if you want to do a teeny bit of research on you.
Which I believe they did because he was gone the whole week prior to
Arizona,
to the arrest, and I think they knew that he was not home, and I think they knew when he came home. He was home for a couple days when they arrested him. And they could have arrested him at Planned Parenthood. They know he's down there every Wednesday, or any of the other places that they...
But it had to be when the whole family would be home.
Right.
Yeah.
When the children would be home.
When they could scare us and keep...
I mean, it's obscene, the abuse of power.
Show of force. He said, we come prepared for anything. I said, I find that really hard to believe. Now, the lead agent, the case agent, was sitting next to me. He didn't say a word. He knew the truth. So we have a pretty much benign conversation the whole way in. Now it's being recorded, and of course I know this, and I'm just talking about homeschool. The guy's driving, he says, I want to homeschool my kids, tell me about it. So I'm educating him on that, and we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles, and we finally get down to the federal building. Now I'm cuffed just in my wrist at this point. When I get in the federal building, I'm fingerprinted, and the guy who was driving says, it was a real pleasure to meet you. And I'm like, okay. It was a joy for me. Thank you. He leaves, and then they belly shackle me, and they shackle my feet, my ankles. I had bare ankles because remember they wouldn't let me put socks on. They shackle my feet tightly. So I shimmy myself into this room, and they chain me to a table for 6 hours. Now,
no breakfast.
No.
Never got the quiche.
Long gone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay.
And just for those listening, this is not normal.
Yeah.
I think that's important. It's like, if anyone's listening has been arrested doing peaceful pro-life activism, maybe it was, in their case, very aggressive actions. But as you said, to do this level of take these measures is extra. And it indicates that this is someone who's going to physically, has, a history of physical violence or extreme terrorism, flight risk, all of these things.
Well, that's the thing is they want to treat him like he's a domestic terrorist, right? That's the whole.
So I'm in there, and I have great peace. It's the closest I ever felt to Jesus in my life. I have an amazing, intimate experience with the risen Lord and my crucified Lord. I'm at Mount Calvary. I'm in that room, and I'm praying without ceasing. I'm having this profound faith experience, encounter with Jesus, and the grace is flooding my heart. I have tremendous peace. I surrender everything because I don't know when I'm going to see them again, and I just give them to God. And I have this experience where I'm just praying for all those involved, praying for the people on the other side, the abortion industry, praying for my family, and I'm just interceding for 6 hours. They do a preliminary hearing where they say, you're not a flight risk, which of course they knew. We're going to release you on your own recognizance. Prior to that, they manipulated and coerced me to give up information, which they told me I have permission not to give them. They call my wife and they do the same. And they're not telling you the full story, and so you're feeling pressured. But I still felt peace, even though actually the woman who was interviewing me, she said, "I can tell you, sir, you're a little agitated." I said, "Frankly, I'm not agitated. I'm just agitated that you're asking me something that you told me I had permission that I didn't have to answer." And but anyhow, they're going to get what they want, and they got what they wanted.
What did they want?
They wanted to find out all the information about my family, right? And I'm a member of the community. I've lived here my whole life. And they want information about my siblings. And I said, look, I'm just not comfortable giving, I'll tell you I have siblings. They live in the area, but I'm not going to give you their names. And they wanted that information. I said, look, you told me I had permission to say no to that. I don't want to tell you their names. Look it up. You can find them, but I'm not giving up that information because my brother and siblings maybe not would want their information out there publicly. Nonetheless, the judge gives me a bond, $10,000 bond, report for your preliminary, your arraignment, and everything's forgiven. So I'm going to be released on my own recognizance, which tells you one thing. They knew I wasn't a flight risk. They had every intention to release me, and I wasn't a threat to the community. So why the show of force? So they keep me in shackles, keep me in my belly shackle, and they keep me my wrist cuffs on, and they take me down to U.S. Marshals. So this is after about 6 hours. And I shimmy like I'm Jim Caviezel in The Passion of the Christ and coming out of the Garden of Gethsemane. And I'm shimmying with my feet. I'm like, is this really necessary? Like, can't you just, I'm walking, you got me belly shackled.
And they're also about to release you on bail.
Right, I'm being released. I said, do you have a cross to the lead agent? And he said, I don't have a cross for you. I said, well, I can tell you it's coming. So we get to the U.S. Marshals and they do prison transfers. So I'm being treated like a convicted felon. And that's how U.S. Marshals is treating me. I've never been dehumanized like I was dehumanized in U.S. Marshals. It's in the same building. I couldn't believe it. There was no innocence there. I was guilty. I was damned where I stood. And they just treated me like a complete inhumane person.
And obviously wearing all of these shackles where you can hardly walk is a outward sign of that. But was there things that they said or just the behavior?
Oh, just very curt.
Dismissive.
Stand there, don't speak, turn around, face the wall. Like treated like less than human, no dignity, no respect. And I even said to the U.S. Marshal, I said, is this how you treat everybody? Well, sir. And my son actually educated me, he said, Dad, that's how they're trained. I said, geez, well, they need to upgrade their training because people are human, even if they are a felon. But nonetheless, I was innocent. I was reunited with my family about 10 hours later from the original arrest, 4 p.m. later that day. So, but it was, like I said, the most prayerful experience of my life, most intimate experience with Jesus I ever had.
What was it like being reunited with your family?
It was great joy. The kids and I think we all just ran out and hugged him. I think I fell into his arms crying because I wasn't sure when I would see him again. I was happy for the children. They just were scared all day. And I just thought maybe this would be the end of it. But
did anyone come over? Were you alone that day?
No, we had co-op that day. And so I decided that I was going to take the kids to co-op because I didn't know what else to do. I contacted Pat Stanton, who is, head of 40 Days for Life and deals a lot with the pro-life union and stuff down where we are, because I knew that he would be able to get in contact with the lawyer. I didn't have that information on my phone. And then I contacted the head of our board to let him know what happened. And then I let my family know to please pray that our home was raided by the FBI and they arrested Mark. And word traveled. So by the time I got to co-op with the children, we never ate the quiche. We gave it to another family of 9 because we couldn't eat. We were too upset. And so we brought it to co-op so that somebody else could have it. And all of the moms just surrounded us and prayed over us, the children and myself. And they all just kind of got on the horn, getting the word out, because it was just so important that the world could start to see what was happening. And then he called and told me that, that he was going to be released. And again, we thought maybe it would all be over, but it's kind of just the beginning of it.
And it was just the beginning. So you get home, but then the pre-trial begins.
Right. So that's September 23rd. On September 27th, we have arraignment. And I looked at this through the lens of the Stations of the Cross. In my mind, I said, okay, we're beginning this journey. January 24th is Crucifixion Day. That's the day of the trial. That's just kind of how I looked at it. And we're going to just go to arraignment, go before Pilate, go before the judge, the magistrate, and we declare our innocence, a plea of not guilty. There's a little bit of media there. There's a lot of media frenzy. I'm not allowed to talk to anybody at this point because it could jeopardize the case. We have Thomas More Society representing us, and we secure the best criminal defense attorney in Philadelphia. Thomas More helps us to do that. So we're represented well on Tuesday at the arraignment. The Department of Justice is there, and we declare that we're not guilty. We're moving to trial. So we begin. We take up that cross, and we start carrying it, not knowing what would come. Of course, it's a 4.5-month journey to January. But nonetheless, our life is not our own anymore. She's a celebrity. She's on Tucker Carlson at this point.
You did great, Ryan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
An introvert.
Thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Yeah. The mobile unit is in the driveway. But she's great, and she's the widow, not the widow.
Oh my goodness.
She's the
Please
the
don't
mother.
say that.
I guess I'm just thinking it. She's the mother, the doting wife, maybe soon to be widow.
Oh, goodness.
No.
But she's there like that. It's sentiment, right? And she's doing a phenomenal job. And I just have to watch like a stag in a pasture, just bridled. And
well, it's to the dynamic, because you've had this public out-faced ministry. Sure. Ryan Marie, you prefer to be more like behind the scenes. You're very vocal. You're like more naturally, temperamentally, kind of more quiet. So it's like this switching of roles too, where you're now leading, and now the man has to go behind the woman because you're not allowed to see.
That's right.
People thought that he was still in jail because all they were hearing was from me.
Right.
He was just baking quiches.
Yeah, he was just like, you can do this. When I was in the mobile unit, he was standing outside praying over it for me.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, so she did a great job and let the whole world know. And then all this love starts pouring in. Prayers all across the world. Mother Teresa's nuns praying over her crypt in Calcutta puts our name and picture over Mother's crypt so that the nuns can remember to pray for us. A village in Uganda is praying for us. We pray for Mark Houck, a whole village, right? Canada, Australia, all across the United States, we're hearing all this love coming in. And wow, it's just overwhelming joy in the midst of all that. Wow, look at all this goodwill.
Seeing how it's bigger than you, and I think we both were, I know I was strengthened by that it wasn't about me, and my fears of being out there had to just go away because people needed to know the truth and hear it, and I was the only one who could proclaim it. So
right
now there was a moment that you were offered a plea deal.
Right. So we're traveling the journey, and your audience needs to know, and the world needs to know, that when the federal government comes after you, they have a 98% conviction rate. So this is our U.S. government. So they don't go after people they're not able to convict and get this decision. So I say to my attorneys, this process, is the federal government going to give us a plea deal? And
that's, by the way, the 98% success rate. If the case isn't very strong, they will offer a plea deal where they try to downgrade the charges, right?
Sure.
And that's what they did with you, because the case was a terrible case.
Interestingly enough, my chairman of my board, who's a former federal prosecutor, says, Mark, well, that has to come from you. The DOJ is not going to offer that. You have to, because he said, Mark, remember, most of the people they go after are guilty people. And they're not going to stand trial because they're guilty. So they're gonna come forward and say, hey, can we present a deal? And he said, the only way, like you said, that the government would come through if they had a flimsy case. So this is December, and they said, Mark, no, I don't think so. They thought with a poor midterm election that President Biden and Merrick Garland, all these people would say, you know what, it's not the climate for it anymore. Let's just drop it, right? And then we thought they were going to drop the case. They didn't drop the case. Of course, midterm elections didn't go the way we thought they would go. Nonetheless, it's December. And I say, are they going to come with a plea? And he said, no, it's got to come from us. I said, okay, well, they said, don't expect a plea. January 6th, of all days, comes an email from the assistant U.S. attorney. Plea agreement, 0 to 6 months, no probation. Now, I'm facing 11 years jail time, federal prison, 3 years supervised probation, and $350,000 fine. That's what I'm charged. That's
That's your kid's
full,
entire childhood, right?
Right.
There.
That's the full sentence right there. So there's fear there. At the same time, knowing we're innocent, we just trust and say, okay, regardless, even if we go to prison, it's for the best. Right? The Lord will not fail us. I know His will, and I know I'm in His will, and I knew that regardless of what happens, that it would be for the best. So we had great faith, and we grew in faith in that journey. So the plea comes in on January 6th, and my attorney reaches out to me, and I said, well, no, I'm not taking that. But I said, let me talk to my wife first. And so I go to Marie, and I say, Rye, they've come in with a plea. What is it? Well, it's basically a slap on the wrist. 0 to 6 months, plead guilty to the second count against the FACE Act, and no probation, and you're done, no fine. She said, well, you're not going to take that because you're innocent. I said, well, good, because I wasn't going to take it. And she said, and two, if you took it, I wouldn't let you come home. So she just emboldened me, and she said, look, no, you're not doing this. Have courage. And then thirdly, we both said we need to do this for the pro-life movement. We need case law. So we needed to risk going to trial. We were 2 weeks out from the trial, and we said, we have to do this regardless. Regardless of what's better for us and our family, we need to do this for the greater good, the common good.
Yeah, God didn't bring us to that moment to just bail out,
Walk away.
Yeah.
And that was just top of mind when he said that to you, hey, they offered us this plea. You're just like, no, don't come home if you take. That just came out of you.
Absolutely not. Like if you need to hear it from me, which I knew he didn't, but absolutely not.
It helped.
You cannot take that. That's against everything we stand for.
Surely. Wow. And then my whole life has stood against that.
Yeah.
And my children wouldn't be pleased with that, as she asked them the same question. So my attorney said no. And they said, are you sure? Have you talked to your client? Like, yeah, I've talked to them. They were surprised that I didn't take it.
They were shocked.
They were shocked.
They were like, are you speaking for him? And he was like, well, I'm his lawyer. Like,
sure, I speak for him.
They couldn't believe it.
So we were marching towards the 24th, which was the trial, which was the hardest journey of the whole thing for us. But we knew we had a strong case, but we also knew that federal government is strong too. And they're going to put everything into this.
And that also there's corruption in the justice system.
Sure.
Not every conviction is right. So you didn't know what was going to happen.
That's what somebody had said to us. If it's a just court, you will be not guilty. If it's a corrupt court, you're going to be guilty no matter what. So it was just trusting, January 24th was the National Day of Prayer for the Unborn. That was the start of the trial and the jury selection. So
and
I
it's
don't think
Philadelphia.
That's a coincidence.
Philadelphia is not known to be a very pro-life city, right? It's very blue, and it always has been. So our jury pool was going to be from that district. And so we didn't know what we were going to get. Sympathizers. In fact, when we showed up for jury selection, most of the people in the jury donate to Planned Parenthood. We asked that question. And a lot of them had taken advantage of their services. So it did not look good on jury selection day.
And they permitted those juries.
Yeah, it was almost all of them anyway. What could you do?
I think there was even just, the story had made like national headlines in the conservative media. The liberal media had said nothing about it. I think there was 4 people out of the 65 or 70 jurors that had heard about it.
Wow.
So that goes to show you what they're watching or, what they're following. So people didn't know about it.
Wow. So what was the trial like?
So January 24th was a hard day. It was very difficult to process that it looked like we weren't going to have a very fair and balanced jury. We had 10 strikes, they had 6 strikes, which means we could strike a juror if we didn't like them or what they answered. You'd ask them questions. But that's only 10 out of 65. So we took the best we could get. My attorneys didn't seem very pleased. They almost seemed like, oh, well, like this is as best as we can do, right? It just is the way the system is set up. Now, the judge seems to be very good for us as far as, he seems very fair. Judge Gerald Pappert, he was very fair in this proceeding. We had to move the kids into the city, so we're in the hotel, because we got to be right there, and we're 2 hours from the city anyway. So our kids are displaced. We're living out of the hotel trying to.
How long was that for?
Like 4 days.
All week, yeah. That week.
Yeah, and we had the night before the jury selection, we did a prayer vigil and adoration, starting with mass at our parish, and Mark did a all-night prayer vigil and adoration.
So my attorney said, "You cannot do this." I said, "Look, I have to do this." And I had done this before with other things that were very pivotal in my life. I said, I need to go into all-night adoration. I said, I felt like it was Holy Thursday. Jesus was in the cistern of Caiaphas' house. And he prepared himself that way. I said, I need to go prepare my heart. I said, my heart's ready, but I need to prepare it. And I need to prepare my family. I need to coat my attorneys in prayer. And they said, please don't do this. What can we do to convince you not to do this? Said,
not to be up all night the night before you
Right.
We need you
to be
sharp.
You need to be focused. You need to not be tired. I said, look, I will be fine. I said, the Lord will give me the strength. But also, this is a spiritual battle just as much as a legal battle. And I have to enter into that. And my wife came. We had mass at my parish, which was an hour plus away. She prayed with me for 2+ hours where she had to go home and be with the kids. And I just stayed an all-night vigil. And we left at 5:30 in the morning, went home, showered, and drove into the city. And I was sharp. I was ready. I was fully focused. I collapsed that night, but that was how we began that journey. The next day after the jury was day 2, it was opening argument day, and it was the government's opportunity to put on their case. And that was tough. It was tough. We said, should we bring the children? We want the jury to see the children, yet will the children cooperate? And could they sit for
We
them?
were planning on bringing all of them. We had never experienced anything like that, so we didn't know that maybe that wasn't the best. But then the night before, I was up all night, and I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. So when he woke up in the morning, I said, I don't think we should take the children. We need quiet in the courtroom. I have been in a courtroom before where I've taken like a baby in a baby carrier, and the judge is like, if the baby cries, you need to leave. Like, not very compassionate.
It's not like a kid-friendly place.
Right. It's not like church, So,
There's no crying
we
around.
decided that we weren't going to bring them. And of course, then we had to bring in some babysitters into the hotel room. But we did bring, Mark wasn't allowed in the courtroom, Mark Jr., because he was going to testify. So Ava, my oldest daughter, and we brought in Catherine, our second oldest daughter. So they're 12 and 10.
That must have been intense for them.
They both said that they wanted to go. We gave them the option. They wanted to go. So but it was very difficult. Our 10-year-old ended up bursting into tears, and it was very hard for her because she just said, they're saying lies, and it's not truthful, So she was going to leave, but I wanted her to stay for our opening argument so that she could hear the truth.
Positive.
Yeah. Right. And then they both left after the opening arguments and didn't stay for the whole trial. Yeah.
So it was interesting. The media was all over it. They had an overflow room because there was so much attention. They had an overflow room for people to come and watch because the room could only hold like 60, 70 people. So there was a lot of support there, a lot of family members, a lot of friends, a lot of people from years prior coming out to support us. So we felt the love there. There was a lot of prayer, a lot of rosaries in the courtroom, a lot of hymns being sung in the hallways. The 12 jurors see the children, they see my wife, And I begin each morning, with prayer. Of course, I have the scriptures, and I'm sitting at the defense table. I always look back and I look at her, and it's like Mary with Jesus. I'm sure she was a strength to Jesus. I looked at her, and she mouthed the words, "I love you." And it gave me great strength, for the day. And just seeing her strength sitting behind me was what I needed to turn around and just be the lamb to the slaughter. Just let them say what they will about me, because I knew it wouldn't be good. And then keep my peace. And I did. I had a lot of peace. Even in the midst of the lies, I had a lot of peace. Day 2 was their whole trial presentation, a lot of good cross-examination. Our attorneys tore apart their witnesses. Truly made them kind of look foolish. And it felt good to see that, because the truth was coming out. It was painful for them, I'm sure, as the government. But our attorneys were doing what they were gifted at doing. Peter Breen, executive vice president for Thomas More, chief litigator, was phenomenal. Brian McMonigal, unbelievable. Maybe a trial lawyer extraordinaire, Clarence Darrow, Scopes Monkey trial. You think of this phenomenal attorney. Just charismatic and just a father for me in the process, fathering me through it, fathering Ryan.
And what a good thing that we had some of our best on it, because and the people around the world, I think all of that love that you were experiencing, and I know, on the live action side, we were making comments and statements about it and praying as well, and so many others, and it's because we realize that this represents the ultimate clash of culture and civilization today, which is, who are we? Do we love children and family and marriage, and do we peacefully serve each other? Or do we not only violate children and family and marriage, but then do we attack those that dare to live for those things?
That's right.
And that's what was happening, and you were caught in the very center of it all, with literally the biggest, the most powerful government on earth, arguably, anyways, right. Trying to throw you behind bars for what? Standing on a sidewalk to pray for the most vulnerable.
There was a lot of interesting back and forth. There was a lot of sidebars between the judge and the defense and the prosecution. A lot of interruption. They had to excuse the jury a lot because the government was just pushing things, and we were refuting a lot of it with our rebuttals, and a lot of conversations. At some point off the record, the judge says to the prosecution, he says, this FACE Act, when is it going to stop? He's like,
wow.
It seems to be infringing upon the liberty of regular citizens. Like,
where's the boundaries?
Where's the boundaries?
There's got to be boundaries. You're spreading it way too thin.
And he says to Sanjay Patel, who's wrote the manual, the attorney for the prosecution, on the FACE Act. He's the guy. He's the second chair at all these cases coming up. He will be sitting there.
He's supposed to be there for the other side.
The other side too. Pregnancy resource centers, the Catholic churches. But anyhow, he says to Sanjay, go back to Washington, D.C. and fix this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Prior to going into the trial, we put a brief forward, Thomas More Society, which said when Ted Kennedy was sponsoring this law, and with David Dorenberger, and they were on the House floor, Dorenberger asked Kennedy, does this apply to escorts?
Right.
And he said, no, it does not.
Wow.
So this was put forward to the judge, and the judge dismissed it because he's a federal judge and he can do that. But he also, I don't know, maybe in his mind said, maybe that's not for the best. I have no idea what he was thinking.
And the FACE Act that's being weaponized against you is basically adding additional charges of conspiracy to those that are seen to make it difficult to access reproductive services in their kind of, dystopian language. And they're trying to find ways then to apply it to anyone who prayerfully and peacefully stands on sidewalks to provide options for women, real choice for women. And globally, Canada has actually imposed laws that force people to not even be able to practice freedom of speech outside of, they don't respect freedom of speech in Canada, like we hopefully still try to respect here. And, you get stories like Mary Wagner, the sidewalk advocate who spent, I think, over 2 years in jail, young woman for praying and counseling on an abortion clinic. And then over in the UK, we have these stories of priests and a young woman who's standing outside abortion clinics in England, and they're praying. They're not even saying anything. And for just praying in their mind. There was a viral clip, a young woman praying in her mind, "Are you praying?" And she says yes, and she's arrested for praying in her mind outside a clinic, on a public sidewalk.
Right.
So that's where other countries have gone, and your fight is so important. Together, the fight to stand up, to let it go to trial, and then to win, which you ultimately would do, because you're showing that this is an overreach against fundamental freedoms that we have as Americans.
Right. Yeah, the statute was being spread so thin that it wouldn't be applied to years down the road. In other words, if I was a reproductive health care worker, escort, and 5 years down the road, I don't volunteer anymore, but someone assaults me, they could apply FACE Act against the person who assaults me because I was formerly a reproductive health care worker. This is how loose the government was applying this, and this is what they were presenting. This case, United States versus Mark Houck, was so important because it was now exonerate those who were trying to exercise First Amendment rights and were dealing with these entanglements with escorts. And if we lost, it would apply across the board. And our First Amendment rights as sidewalk counselors would have been gone. So we knew we were risking a lot. We knew it was important. And you watch this theater play out, this political theater in some respects. And seeing the agenda, what was being presented was new to us. Seeing firsthand and hearing rather firsthand what their intentions were and how the judge was trying to refine it and really chisel down to see hey, this isn't appropriate. But he was really going to turn it over to the jury. He had full confidence that the jury would do their job.
And how did that land?
I'll tell you what, we went on after 2 days of their defense, and we went on our defense. All it was going to be was me and my son. That's it. And, defendants...
Those are your only witnesses.
That's it. And the defense usually doesn't put the defendant up in federal prosecutions. Why? Because they're usually guilty. But in this case, I was going to go on the stand right after my son. And you'll hear from Mark Jr., but he was great. I said to my attorney, I said, "How did he do?" He said, "Great." I said, "How did I do?" He said, "You were good, but your son was better." So I was so proud of him, and he was so brave, and he got up there, and what was interesting is we told the truth. We didn't try to get away from it. I admitted, hey, I'm not a perfect human being. I make mistakes. But all their testimony was, I can't recall, I can't remember. And we were like, this is what happened. My son and I, we just shared what happened. And I think the jury saw the truth in that. But we were still nervous. My heart was ready, and I knew I was ready. And I really felt like I was going to be convicted because I didn't think we'd get a jury that would be fair.
When you thought you were going to be convicted, did you think this would mean potentially years in prison? What did you think?
Potentially. I don't know. It's my first go-round, the first one, right? So
first brush up with the law.
We closed at 2:30 on Friday. Closing arguments were powerful, strong. We're feeling good, but you know what? They're going to deliberate, and 2+ hours, they come back and they say we're deadlocked.
Wow.
So remember,
that's a little scary too, because they're like, it's not just a complete.
What does that mean?
Ridiculous. What does it mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean? And so remember, I'm carrying the weight of the cross. So deadlock. It's Friday. The judge says resume on Monday. So we got 3 days in the tomb, right? We got Saturday, Sunday.
Wow.
Come back on Monday, and I said to my sister who was there, I said, prepare your heart, Mare, because I don't think I'm going to be exonerated here.
She's like, what do you mean? I think everyone in the courtroom was feeling a lot of peace from Mark and I. Obviously, internally, we definitely had our fears. We're human. But we both did feel a lot of peace. And I feel like everyone in the courtroom felt that. My siblings kept saying, console us.
Yeah, I would come out and everybody would be crying. I'm like, what's going on?
Oh, so you were consoling them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I thought the Lord had strengthened us so much. And I guess they weren't on that journey like we were. So we come back to the court. Now, what happened, interestingly enough, on Monday morning, there's a note for the judge. And the note says that there's a juror who's causing a problem, who is not willing to deliberate. He's guilty. I'm not interested in discussing this, right? This is essentially what happened.
Wow.
The judge calls each individual juror into his personal chambers to interview them. This is unheard of. And because they usually just let the jury do their thing. And if they're deadlocked, then it's a hung jury.
Wow.
Well, the jury said, this guy is a problem. He's a virus in here, essentially.
He wasn't willing to deliberate.
He wasn't deliberating. So the judge interviews him, and they remove him,
Wow.
which never happens. So they had to go get the alternate who was excused on Friday, and they had to call him up and say, "You're going to come back to federal court."
But he hadn't heard. Oh, he had heard the argument.
So that the
Right.
alternate
Yeah, he was there for the whole
sits in.
case. But they had to call him in because they had to replace that juror. So we're out, and about an hour goes by, and they say, "Come back." I'm like, "Uh-oh." So I run. We're grabbing lunch. I run back, and they say they have a verdict, right? And we're like,
we knew, we were thinking, like, in my mind, I kept thinking, there has to be one person that just says, I'm not sure if, what his motive was. That's all we needed. So when they said that they had, a verdict so quickly, because I wasn't expecting everyone to, I wasn't expecting it to be
To
fully not
exonerate
guilty.
him.
Yeah.
we were expecting a mistrial.
Yeah.
So
at
I was thinking the worst was about to happen.
And if it was a mistrial, they can try again. So we're just thinking, okay, let's hope for a mistrial. At the worst, we'll face the music, whatever we have to do. So they come back, and it's 3 p.m., which isn't lost on us as Catholics, when the verdict is announced. So I'm sitting there, and this is the only time I got nervous, waiting for the jury to walk out of the jury deliberation room.
Did you make eye contact with any of them?
Yeah, I'd look over at them, and I tried not
thumbs
to.
up.
She was looking.
I was looking. Every time I saw them, I would cry, because, especially the first time I saw them, it's very sobering to see the people who will decide your family's future. It's just 12 of them, and you're like trying to get any sign of like what they feel, but they were all very
Stoic.
professional, I guess. But yeah, you're grasping.
So they came out. They all were pretty stoic, and of course it's quick. They get out there, and the foreman says, they say, "Do you have a verdict?" And he says, "Yes, we do." And they say, "We the jury find Mark Houck, count 1, not guilty." So I was put my hand over my eyes, and I was so nervous waiting for them to come out. It's the only time I felt a little nerves, but I was grateful for that. I felt like we would get a not guilty on that one. Count 2 had a lot to do with the video, because I pushed him. It was on video. You can't refute that. It was dealt with assault, a simple assault, which you could argue. But it had to prove motive, as my wife said. Were my intentions to stop reproductive health care? No, my intentions were to protect my son.
Or even your intention was to harm him, which it
Right.
certainly wasn't.
No.
You're just trying to create space.
Trying to be a dad.
Yeah.
And so I was preparing my heart, but it was quick. The jury find Mark out on count 2, not guilty. And then I just collapsed in my own arms and sobbed and wept, and I pushed my attorney and a long push. So happy for them. I said, "Can't thank you enough." And I turned back, and I embraced my wife, and we just sobbed and wept together in joy. Oh, so relieved. And then I turned around, I looked at the judge, and he said, "Mr. Houck, you're free to go," which were the best words to hear. But then I said, "Thank you, Judge." And he said, "Thank you, Mr. Houck." You could tell there was almost a relief on his part, a joy in it for us. He didn't have to say that. And, they asked me when I was coming out of the courtroom, they said, "Describe how you're feeling." And I said, "I feel like George Bailey." I said, that's the only way I can describe it. This whole process has been, I am you kind of thing. Like, I'm just Joe the plumber. I'm just a regular citizen. I'm George Bailey, loving his family, trying to do what he can, and fully set free. Felt like such a joy in our heart, and just such gratitude for the journey.
What's the future like for the Houck family?
We just say yes. Yes, move forward. We're open to allowing God to use us however he sees fit,
I had a vision when I was first arrested that I was going to go to the State of the Union.
You did.
I don't know why. I said, "I think I'm going to be at the State of the Union." She says, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I thought it'd be with another administration. Well, I got an email a week prior to the State of the Union from a neighboring congressman in Pennsylvania, do you want to come to the State of the Union? So we knew that we would be seeking justice here, that we would go after the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Justice. We already had people in the House saying, we need answers for this. And we were cooperating with them all during the journey into the trial. And we were going to go to the State of the Union. So we went to the State of the Union a week or so ago, and we're now in line to interview with the Judiciary Committee to give testimony and testify before Congress about what happened to us so that we can hold the Department of Justice accountable. And we'll be seeking civil rights attorneys and former FBI whistleblowers and people who want to help us, who are coming out of the woodworks to help us to expose this evil, which is this persecution of innocent people, American citizens who are just exercising their rights. It needs to be brought to the light. And so that's where we're going to be focusing our energy and doing a lot of interviews.
Yeah, thank you for doing this one. And are you going to go back to the sidewalk?
Absolutely. We went back last week, and it was a great week. I said, what did it feel like? I said, it was like a homecoming. I spend so much of my time on a weekly basis. It feels like home in a way because I'm there so much. Of course I'm going to go back. Why would I not? This is what we do. Nothing changes but the date. We're there. We're ready to serve, and we're ready to use our gifts again, and we're so blessed to do it. Our kids all went. All 7 of them went. She said if I got in prison that she was going to take the kids there every Wednesday till I returned to the sidewalk.
Wow.
I don't know how she pulled that off, but she'd probably figure out a way to do that.
Oh, she can pull that off.
I was like, if they're taking one of him and they think they're going to get rid of us, well, now they're going to have 8 of us there every
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inspiring so many people, and you're just getting started.
Thank you,
Thank
Lila.
you.